Hello everybody, Raspberry Barrel here, and it's time for part 3 of Selene the Expander by Mewni Historian on DeviantArt. Where we left off, Selene had come home to the Butterfly Kingdom and was taking a 2-month break before she returned back to her new land. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any noises in the background. Let's begin! Selene would spend much of her time in the years to come going back and forth between Luciolus and Farfalien's homeland, the name of the continent her kingdom was on. In Sagnog of 949 BS, while at home in Butterfly, Selene was awakened in the middle of the night by a guard. She asked why she shouldn't blast the guard. He informed her that someone wanted to see her in the west courtyard. Selene demanded to know who it was, but the guard was sworn not to. Selene grabbed a cloak and in her nightgown took the long way around so she could look down from above to see who was down there, but all she saw was a cloaked figure. When Selene got down there, a wind picked up and blew Selene's hair out, and she asked the figure who they were. When the figure removed her hood, her black hair blew throughout the air, and she looked at Selene with her blue eyes. It was her sister Hecate. Selene's eyes teared up and ran to hug her sister, who hugged her in response. It was many years since they last saw each other. 8 years to be precise. Once they let go, the two of them sat on the bench and looked at the stars. Selene turned to her sister, who was wearing a veil, and asked her where she had been all these years. Hecate turned to Selene and pulled off her veil, touching her scars, and pulled out a knife the two knew all too well. Hecate had traveled to find answers to her scars, wondering why magic couldn't heal her. Turns out the weapon was made from some kind of stone that negates magical energy. Since her face was cut with it, magic couldn't heal her, not completely, and it interferes with her own inner magic. Even though she went throughout puberty, she found it hard to produce her own magic, but she found another way. She honed in on her frustrations, learned how to draw out magic from a different source, a darker source. Magic is tied to emotions. Beginners learn to draw it out by focusing on positive emotions, but Hecate learned to draw it out by focusing on her pain, her dark emotions. Hecate invented dark magic, magic that would be a bit more destructive force given how one creates it. Hecate took the stone knife in her hands, set a spell, and blew black fire that turned the knife to ash. Selene was both horrified and impressed. She took Hecate inside and got her into some proper clothes, as hers were in tatters. While grabbing one of her dresses to give to her, she told Glosric about her creation of dark magic. While Glosric was visibly displeased with the news, he only responded with, "The butterfly finds a way," which is either a reference to the butterfly family's preservance or the mythical pre-Urania figure. Either way, Selene was just happy to have her sister back. Selene presented Hecate to the family the next morning, and she nearly crushed Corvus to death, who she barely recognized with that animal on his face. It was that morning that Selene also announced the creation of nobility, families who worked under their kingdom's crown, but governed over their lands, and had authority of their own. And the first noble would be Corvus, which would be the old Firefly Kingdom as it was moving to Luciolus. With Hecate's vast knowledge of magic, Selene persuaded her cousin King Brullo to give Hecate a job as an instructor at the academy in Alaron, under the condition Hecate kept her dark magic to herself, and Hecate agreed. That summer, Hecate left to go live at the academy to become a teacher, and Corvus went to go solidify his family's future rule in Arcadia, taking those lands and dividing the old Firefly lands between them and the direct butterfly rule. With that, Selene created the monarch name for Corvus's family, a reference to his name, Crown, and he was a descendant of the butterfly family. It would be another generation before nobles in other kingdoms began to form. In Quark of 948 BS, Selene and her husband attended the wedding of Corvus and Beresa, their public ceremony anyway. At the reception, Selene created a dance that shot sparkling lights into the air, the first fireworks. Hecate and Selene, Reconnecting. In Norvath of 947 BS, the entire butterfly family in St. Mo traveled to Lucialis to show her, Alexandra and Zim, and their spouses the colony for the first time. Though the trip was a little hard on her grandmother, Selene was filled with joy to see the look on her face when they saw the harbor city of Solaris. It was 2 years over 100 since the first settlers washed on the shore of Farfiliana and began their civilization, and Mo was pleased with how far they had come. Selene and her family traveled to Luminius, the capital city, and admired the villages they passed through. While the new castle was still at work in progress, the city was large and grand, reminding her mother and grandmother of the cities they raised their family. The family met up with the Fireflies, seeing a very pregnant Queen Scarlet. Her child would be the first royal to be born in this new kingdom, with Mo, Alexandra, and Zim hugging a very proud Red. A couple of weeks later, Selene and her siblings and her grandmother boarded a ship to go home. Their parents decided to stay for a while, really get to see the new lands. Selene was happy they decided to stay, and gave her parents a bone-crushing hug before leaving for home. With her parents away from the kingdom, and the colony pretty much self-sufficient, Selene decided to stay home for a while, focusing on her own kingdom for a while, and on starting a family. While Selene quickly found life a little dull now that she was a full-time queen, in 946 BS, Selene became pregnant in Darturk, but sadly lost the baby during the time of Squeg. 2 years later, in 944 BS, in Cork, Selene became pregnant yet again, but the next month a thief broke into the castle, and Selene took a mace to the gut. While Selene didn't suffer major damage and would heal, Selene's unborn child did not. She sunk into a depression, one that she hid well from her subjects, but anybody could see her worry. Selene became pregnant again in the spring of 943 BS, and was both happy and worried. But by summer, about halfway through, Selene decided to spread the news of her pregnancy throughout Mewni, and it reached her parents via the newly discovered razor cranes of Lucialis, birds capable of opening small dimensional tears. To say her pregnancy went well was an understatement. Due to the miscarriages, Selene was extremely careful with what she ate and did, even let her husband Azulon handle the major decisions. Selene even went on bed rest during her last month, grievance, to decrease her stress. Her baby was due to come on the autumn equinox, Darturk 22nd, but the baby did not come. 9 days later, on Darturk 31st, Selene finally went into labor. Selene's labor was intense from the start. Azulon had to give Selene bricks to keep her from destroying his hands, and she crushed dozens of them throughout her day and half of labor. However, while most babies are born head first, this one was born bottom first, meaning Selene had to push even harder. They said that her screams could be heard at the edge of the city. Not long after nightfall, Selene finally gave birth to a child, her son. After the flash both her mother and grandmother had during their childbirth, Selene heard the cries of her child, and was both crying and laughing when she got to hold her son. She named him Dipper, Stargazer, as the baby couldn't stop looking at the stars that night. Her son was born with his father's blue hair, and while eye or hair color had been swapped from parent to child, but Dipper's eyes were a combo of his parents, yellow and blue hair, and he had 5 pointed light purple stars pointed downwards on his cheeks, and definitely his mother's set of lungs. While Selene was thrilled to have an heir, it was short-lived due to the laws set by her mother. Should Selene have a daughter, Dipper's title as the next ruler would be replaced, which she would feel very guilty about. But Selene's worries faded when she saw the face of her baby and told Azulon she wanted more kids in the future, though raising a single child would prove to be a challenge for her. Selene congratulating Scarlet's pregnancy. Selene found motherhood very challenging for her. The constant crying and breastfeeding of her newborn was very trying for her, not knowing how to comfort her child other than feeding him. Azulon once wrote, In response to Dipper's crying, dear Selene shouted from the nursery, "Seriously? My breasts are emptier than a Kappa's head. Do you want lasagna or something?" I worry for both her and our son. Eventually, Selene figured out how to soothe him. After almost 2 Selenes, she was known for being very attached to her son, hardly letting the little guy out of her sight, always either in her company or Azulon's. And Gravnock of 942 BS, Selene took Azulon on a trip to the Firefly Kingdom. While baby spit up, Dipper spit up an extreme amount, needing a bucket next to Selene for the entire trip, arriving in the middle of Zamranor. Selene and Zim were excited to see their cousin Scarlet, and her near 5-year-old daughter Princess Ember, and her 2 younger brothers. It had been years since she'd been in Firefly, but the colony was still growing under the reign of Scarlet, establishing their own customs different from those seen in the homeland. Selene and her family would return home just in time to celebrate the first birthday of Dipper. Early the next year in 941 BS, Selene's sister Hecate announced she was engaged to a craftsman named Kylan, and Selene could not be happier for her sister. However, he was murdered during the month of Cork, stabbed in the heart while jumping in front of Hecate. When Hecate explained this after it happened, everyone took notice of her black scars on her arms. When asked, all Hecate said was, "Revenge is worth any price," and would live in the castle. One night, Selene brought some tea to Hecate, but found her room empty and the window open. She ordered guards to search for her sister, but turned up empty. She was extremely sad, fearing she'd lost her sister yet again. But then her son came into her room with an apple, saying it was from Grandma. Selene laughed and took her son and the apple into her bed, grateful she still had her son and husband. When fall rolled around, after visiting her brother Corvus, after his son, Sylvian Monarch, the firstborn noble, was born, Selene discovered she was pregnant again. Selene felt bittersweet about this, given she just lost her sister and had trouble with pregnancy in the past. Started showing and announced it at the end of that year. The next year, when Selene was a few weeks away from giving birth, in the month of Gravnock, after Selene turned 39, she fell ill. She was so ill her family and kingdom was worried that she and the baby might not make it, but Selene was determined. On Spleenex 6, Selene gave birth to her second son. Both she and him were extremely weak, and Selene's parents feared for their lives. It wouldn't be until the month of Zamranor did Selene reveal her baby to the kingdom. Selene and Azulon named him Leo, both in reference to his red lion face emblems, and that even though his body was weak, he did have a strong heart. Leo had gray eyes like his parents, but had red hair that, according to Leanne, was the hair color of her father. The only people who had direct contact with Leo till then were Selene, Azulon, and Dipper, who was excited to have a little brother. In Grievance of 939 BS, Selene discovered she was not only pregnant, but with twins. She used the mirror spell her mother invented to see her child, but noticed 2 shapes and later discovered 2 heartbeats. Selene, though, took it as an excuse to indulge extra, saying she was eating for 3. In Sagnock the 11th in 938 BS, Selene gave birth to her twin sons. The firstborn was named Phobos, and the secondborn was named Deimos, both in honor of the twin moons. Though they were twins, Phobos and Deimos didn't look alike. Phobos inherited their grandfather Zim's dirty blonde hair and Alexandra's blue eyes, and golden circles with a dot in the center as his emblem. Deimos had inherited their mother's yellow hair and had their father's blue hair colors as his eyes, and thin silver crescent moons on his cheeks. And the difference between these two was more than just their appearance. Phobos was always a little more aggressive than Deimos, who was known as the quiet one of the two. With 2 babies at the same time and 2 older children, Selene strained between her duties as a mother and her duties as a queen, sometimes having to blow off planned events to deal with an emergency with her kids. Like one morning, she had a meeting with the Johanssons regarding their growing kingdom, but had to reschedule for the evening because her son Leo broke his nose. After a couple of years, and the twins could be left alone, Selene would finally get some peace. But it did not last long, as in the late fall of 935 BS, Selene was pregnant yet again. After she had 2 miscarriages, she prayed she could have a family, but 5 was pushing it for her a little. And this pregnancy made Selene a little extra cranky. Once, when the kitchen forgot to bring the bread, Selene slammed the table so hard she cracked it. A couple of days before delivery, and a week late, Azulon wrote in his journal, "I love my wife, but after she threatened to sit on my brother Brullo in a meeting and left to go to the bathroom, I looked to Corvus and said, okay, when she comes back, you hold her nose and I'll blow until the baby comes out so this nightmare can end." Finally, on Cork 38, 934 BS, Selene gave birth to her 5th son, Planet. She named him that because she felt his head was as big as one because it got stuck. Planet had green hair like his grandfather Pines, and his other grandfather Zim's purple bluish eyes. And for his cheek emblems, he had purple comet streams, a different shade than his brother Dipper's. With 5 sons, Selene felt like she had enough kids, swearing she would lose her mind if she had a number 6. With the years of little sleep due to having 5 babies, Selene invented a miracle drink, made from the seeds of a plant in the valley past the charred mountains. She called it coffee, from the words kof, meaning brown, and fi, meaning energy. And the drink she made was a brown drink made from roasted beans, and it gave people a boost of energy when they drank it. This would be a miracle for future royals and nobles to help with the energy required to be a parent and ruler. Selene would look down from the tower and would smile when she saw her sons playing together in the gardens, reminding Selene of her early childhood and her playing with her brother and sister. And it also made Selene cry, as she never knew what happened to her own sister. Selene and Hecate hadn't been close for over 30 years, but she felt the 2 of them really came together before she ran away. Dipper was only a year and a half old when she left, but Selene told her sons about their lost Aunt Hecate, telling them stories of their youth with their brother Corvus, which filled her kids' eyes with wonder, all asking where she was, but Selene never responded. Sadly, just after her son Planet's 1st birthday, a week actually, in Cork 41st of 933 BS, her grandmother svtfoe passed away due to old age, and all of Mewni mourned the loss of the former queen. Selene making morning coffee. And that was part 3 of the biography of Selene the Expander by Mewni Historian on DeviantArt. Thank you all so much for listening, and please go check out Mewni Historian. Link in the description. Thank you all for your patience. Part 4 should be hopefully soon. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.